Sujeet ji, welcome. Welcome to the India at Harvard Speaker Series, where we interview and engage faculty, staff, students, and alumni all over the world from Harvard on India's progress and future growth. We are so happy to have you here today. Personally speaking, it's been a very long time since we are seeing you, or at least I am. So it's really a pleasure to have your time and company today. Thank you so much for joining. I know it's late for you, but thank you for making time.
Thank you so
So
much,
today
Priyanka.
we
Anirudh,
are
thank you
very
for having me.
today
Our
we are
pleasure.
very delighted to have a conversation with you today about your professional journey to becoming an MP in India. This is an extraordinary achievement, and you're making such great strides every day as a member of parliament. So we would love to hear about your journey, and then your vision for socioeconomic development in India, and some issues that we will deep dive into. So we would love to start this conversation by learning a little bit about what you did prior to your time at Harvard at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, and what your journey has been like post Kennedy School. What sort of your aspirations were for coming back from graduate school, and what steps you took in your professional journey to getting to where you are today.
Well, a lot of questions, Priyanka. Well, my journey started in a small town, very small town in the state of Odisha. It's a state in the eastern part of India. So I grew up there. I went to school, completed my 12th. It's one of the remotest districts of India, actually. It's called Kalahandi. Some of the Indian audience might know that it was one of the most backward districts of the country. But today it's a remarkable success story. And after my 12th, I went to do my engineering as any middle class young boy of those time would have. And post engineering, I joined the IT industry. I started working with Infosys. It was a great honor to work with Infosys. Infosys was one of the best known companies, or one of the best companies to work for in those days. But after working with Infosys for a couple of years, I decided to quit the corporate life. That was the year. So I joined Infosys in '98. I graduated in '97. Infosys. I started working in '98. In 2002, I decided to leave Infosys. I had a great desire to work with people. So I said, no, corporate life is not for me, and I left Infosys to go back to Odisha, and I joined a very small NGO. Uh, I was I was unclear. I was not sure what I was getting into, but I had the clarity that I will not go back to the corporate life anymore. And then I ended up working with this NGO in Odisha for 2.5 years until July, August of 2024. Sorry, 2004. While working for this NGO, I decided to go for higher studies. Initially, I thought I should go for a PhD in development economics or something similar. But I didn't want to be out of the real life, quote unquote, for 4 or 5 years, because a PhD would have taken me into the academic world for at least 4 or 5 years. So I said, let me go for a 1 or 2 year program, and then I settled for an MBA, and I wrote the CAD exam, which is the exam you have to qualify to get into the IIMs in India, and also I sat for the GMAT, then applied to a couple of universities abroad, couple of business schools. So I got through all the five IIMs in India, and also was accepted by Oxford MBA program, because the Oxford program was offering me a full scholarship. It was a 1 year program, and Oxford is such a powerful brand name in higher
Mm.
education. I chose Oxford, and after Oxford, I went to Geneva to work for the World Economic Forum, and thereafter I went to do a second master's. That's where we met Priyanka at the Kennedy School. So this was the year 2010, and I had absolute clarity in my mind that I would go back to India at some point. I had no desire to settle abroad. And in 2011, after completing HKS, I decided to move back to India. I relocated back to Odisha and then got into politics. Uh, well, it's not as easy as it sounds. I started working. So, I mean, I'm very fortunate that way because I was introduced to Honorable Chief Minister of Odisha, Naveen Patnaik, and I started working for him. And I guess he liked my work. He found me good enough to give me more and more responsibilities in the party. And so I was handling the election campaign, the election strategy for Biju Janata Dal, which is my party, for the 2014 elections and the 2019 elections. In between, he asked me to join the government as well. So then in 2020, one day he calls me and he tells me, Sujit, I'm sending you to parliament. So, so yeah, it was, uh, it
Wonderful.
was like this.
That's wonderful. And Sujiji, what would you say was your biggest observation in that transition from working in civil society to being a member of parliament? You said there's a scale that can be achieved when you move into the political sphere. So what was that big transition?
The biggest difference is the nature of the impact. So, as a politician or as a lawmaker, you make policies. So you can talk of any social development indicator or parameter. It's a reflection of a particular policy of the government. And as a development practitioner or as an NGO worker, you have a very very limited canvas. You work in the limited geography A, and B, the impact you make, you are unsure whether it will outlive your presence there. Okay, so 10 years down the line, if I go to the same cluster of villages where I have worked, I'm not sure if it will continue to have the same impact which we had tried to bring in. But as a politician or as a lawmaker, if you make the right policies, if you bring in the right uh, design in the policy making process, then assuming that the implementation also will be okay, it will have a wider impact. The scale is simply humongous. We cannot compare the kind of scale and impact which policy making brings in, as opposed to implementation of those policies by civil society.
So, Sujiji, you're sitting on a fantastic platform where you get to shape policy, strategy as well, institutional reform, as well as governance. So, lay out for us what is your personal vision. Uh, we would love to hear what your personal vision is for the state of Odisha, of course, where you come from and where you're a member of parliament. You could pick a few issues if you'd like, or one particular that is close to your heart. But also, we would love to hear about your socioeconomic vision for India as well over the next 5 to 10 years.
Sure. See, Odisha is it's a subset of India. So most of the socio-economic issues that are prevalent in Odisha are also largely prevalent across the country. So whatever I say about Odisha is by and large relevant for the whole nation. My priority has been education first and foremost. So I have been a big proponent of government focusing and investing more in primary and secondary education. See, as a nation, we spend less than 3% of our GDP on education. Uh, there was a there was a there was a body called the Kothari Commission, which had recommended way back in the 1960s that as a nation we should spend about 6% of our GDP on education. So we are almost at half of it, or maybe slightly more than half of it.
Yeah.
Now, now we cannot expect to be a developed nation in the next 30, 40 odd years, or we cannot call ourselves a Vishwa Guru, which the current government likes to call itself, unless we focus on education. We have this irony where we have the best of tertiary education. We have the world class IITs and IIMs and the best universities comparable to the best in the world. But our primary education and secondary education is really, really pathetic. So you have a generation of children who have been deprived of good quality education. That's, I think, the biggest regret for me, both in Odisha and largely across the country. So I have been extremely vocal about it, both in the parliament and elsewhere, that if we really want to maintain this growth momentum, if we want to become an economic middle income country in the next 15 20 years, from being where we are today, then we have to focus on our education. That's one. Second is R&D. Again, that's related to education. But today, as a nation, we spend less than 0.7% of our GDP on R&D. And tell me, we want to be a digital economy. We want to be a $1 trillion digital economy by 2025. But hopefully, we'll be a $5 trillion economy by 2025. So 20% of that will be the digital economy. Can you reach that goal without focusing on R&D? And when I say R&D, it means R&D in the pharma, R&D in agriculture, R&D in automobiles, in green energy. So I'll give you some comparable numbers. Israel spends 4.8% of its GDP on R&D. South Korea 4.2, US 3.2 odd, China 3 odd, and we are only at zero point 0.7. So we need to really, really focus on R&D. And finally, I'll talk of skilling for our youth. So you have half of our population under 25. So that is 700 million people. 700 million people under 25. How are you going to gainfully employ these people? This is a huge, huge demographic dividend if you leverage it well. And otherwise, it will become a demographic disaster. It can be a huge source of social unrest. So to leverage this massive youthful population, you have to focus on skilling. I'm glad that this current government has given a lot of thrust on skilling, and this is why I'm very, very optimistic about India's future in the next 2 3 decades. So these are the 2 3 areas which are my priorities as a parliamentarian. Does it answer you, Priyanka?
Yeah, yeah.
So
No, this is great. And Sujiji, if I may, just drill down on the education piece, right? And I think you and I have spoken about the R&D piece also at length,
Yes.
in person
Yeah.
meetings. But on the education side, right? I think that that's been a long-term issue that I think over decades now we've heard that India is not spending enough on education, right, as a percentage of GDP. But there's also, which you've rightly highlighted, in terms of the numbers that we're spending percentage wise is too low. But tell us what you see as other obstacles also on the education front beyond the budget allocation of the government, right? So I think money alone might not be the solution here, even if tomorrow the government was to magically increase that number to 6%. Is your sense that that solves the education problem for India? Or are there other elements that are needed, other obstacles that need to be overcome for our education to meet the requirements that India has to become a income country?
Well, Anirudh, today we have the resources to spend on education. I'll give you an
Sure.
example of my state. Today, we are one of the most fiscally disciplined states in the country, and we have the money to build as many number of schools as required. We have the resources to build as many smart classrooms, buy as many computers and laptops for our kids as are needed. But where are we going to get the quality teachers from? I come from a district
Correct.
where You have schools where a single teacher teaches like 7 8 classes. So we
Yeah,
simply we don't have enough number of teachers, and teacher absenteeism is rampant in rural India now.
that's right.
And this is where I think India has a great opportunity, because today we are rolling out 5G across the country. Barring a few patches here
Absolutely.
and there, today 5G is being rolled out across the country. So you have the whole country today connected digitally. You have all these edtech companies, startups, and many government supported entities coming out with the same content which a kid in Delhi has. Today, a kid in Kalahandi, which is my district, can have access to the same content in her vernacular local language. Okay, so with a single device, whether it's a computer or a mobile phone, if I have the same
Right.
content which a kid studying in DPS Delhi has, the same content is made available to a kid studying in a very very remote government school in Kalahandi in her language. Then you solve this problem of quality teachers. So this is giving me the greatest hope, because with the penetration of internet, and with the content that is being generated, I think that has democratized education, and this I think will be the biggest game changer. So it's
Has it
not necessarily the
already sort
resources.
of started to Has it already started to seep in? Like, would today
Yes,
schools in Kalahandi be using a lot more
yes,
technology
yes, yes,
and
yes, yes,
digital content, or is that something
yes.
that's more in the future right now?
No, no, it's happening, Anirudh. It's happening. It's heartening to note that for we have something called the NEET exam to qualify for medicine
Right,
in India. So today there is a pan
medicine.
India
That's right.
exam. Yeah, so you have to sit for one exam that's called the NEET exam to study medicine, and you'll be glad to note that the topper of NEET exam is a girl from a state called Tamil Nadu, studying in a government school in remote Tamil Nadu. Okay, and this is not an isolated example. There are today, particularly girls, tribal girls, who are qualifying for IITs from Kalandi. Can you believe this?
Yeah,
When I couldn't
which
qualify
is
for the
incredible.
IITs in 50 years, not a single kid from Kalandi could qualify for IIT. Okay, and today you have girls, tribal girls from Kalandi, who are getting into IITs because they have access to coaching material, they have access to content, they have access to learning materials in their local language, and they are competing with the best of the country. So this is why I'm very very hopeful that technology is going to be the game changer. Technology is going to be the equalizer. So you don't need to spend 6% on GDP. That's
Yeah,
always welcome. But if you are able to bring in technology and access to technology, digital literacy, then I think we will
that
definitely
problem
see a
can be
different India.
solved more efficiently, and maybe with a combination
Yes,
of private sector entrepreneurship along with government support. So I think that's
yes,
basically, I think, what you're suggesting. Yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
So, Gigi, we read in the Odisha economy survey of this year that the Odisha's literacy rate is in par with the national average. It's 72.99%. So
Correct.
it's not behind. There is an ability in the population to convert some of that capability into sort of a higher value added opportunity, right? So, can you just flesh out when it comes to education? I mean, particularly in the state of Odisha, what are some things? Let's demarcate between the rural skill set versus the urban skill set, right? So, what are the opportunities that the state is looking at to sort of skill on the rural side versus the urban side? Is the urban side focus a little bit more on enterprise development or converting the talent into industry? Is there sort of a labor mapping? We've read that there's quite a bit of work in industrialization around bridges and ports and highways. So Is it trying to convert that talent into industry, into manufacturing? What's happening on the rural side with youth? Tell us some sort of interventions that are happening on the state level when it comes to education.
Sure. Odisha was traditionally an agri economy. So 75 to 80% of the population was dependent on agriculture. And then mining was another big sector of the economy. And because of lack of employment opportunities in the state, many people from Odisha used to migrate to Hyderabad, to Surat, to different parts of India in search of jobs and livelihood. Now, what we have done is to do a skill mapping. So today, everyone in Odisha, whether she is based in the state or she has moved out of the state, is mapped. So, the best of plumbers across the country and in the Middle East, they come from Odisha. Just like Kerala gets the produces the best of nurses,
Mhm.
and they're highly prized. The plumbers from Odisha are highly prized in Mumbai or Dubai or other places. So we have done the skill mapping of every ODI youth, and we are trying to play the role of matchmaking. Okay. Now, because unemployment, providing job to the youth is a big challenge for any government, and in a particularly a state like Odisha. So we have now identified a couple of priority sectors, green energy being one, and Odisha is a Odisha is a state which is very conducive for solar. So today we have trained
Hmm.
an army of solar barefoot engineers.
Hmm.
So today, if you go to any part of India where you have a solar plant, you'll probably find a handful of these barefoot engineers, solar engineers. When I say engineer, it's not like they don't have an engineering degree, but they are adequately skilled to repair any malfunction in the solar panel or the battery, or to take care of the connectivity, grid connectivity. So that's one. Tourism. We are focused massively on tourism. We are focusing on training a cadre of young boys and girls, men and women, who could find decent employment in the hospitality sector, because that's booming in India. So solar, uh, tourism, and then finally this construction sector, because we have these traditional skills: plumbing, masonry, electricians. So that is another area where we have embarked on a massive skill drive, right? Remember, at the beginning I had said that skilling is something we really need to focus on as a country if we have to
Yeah.
leverage the potential of this 700 million youth who are under 25. So this is why government of Odisha also has also massively started focusing on skilling, and we have identified these priority sectors, which are the low hanging fruits. And I'm
Yeah. No,
glad
I think
that
that. Yeah.
yes,
No, I think that sounds very strategically, I think, focused
yes,
on existing sectors that are large. And as you mentioned, some of the sunrise industries like solar and clean energy that positions, the youth you're skilling very nicely for both, I would say, the present set of jobs and also slightly more future oriented jobs. So that seems like a good mix of your skilling strategy as well.
exactly. And
I think
also,
these are very
we wanted to complement the strength of a youth in Odisha. We didn't want to compete with Kerala. We didn't want to compete with the youth Punjab or the youth in Maharashtra, because we knew that those are not our strengths, right? So we really
yes.
Yeah.
wanted to focus on those sectors which other states were not really focusing on, and we felt that it would be complementing the inherent skill of a youth in Odisha.
This is very smart and promising strategies to look at one's own competitive advantage, to do this sort of sectoral mapping within the state. and to also see where you could compete in the global arena, in the market today. So that's very promising. And also, we read that there's a new hockey stadium in the state of Odisha, and it's one of the largest in the world. So I'm sure there's going to be opportunity for sports tourism and also a new
True.
cadre of youth going into careers, and professional choices around sports, correct?
Correct. In fact, we have the largest hockey stadium in the world, Priyanka. Not one of the largest. We do have
Wow.
the largest hockey stadium in the world, and Odisha has successfully hosted the World Cup hockey twice in a row in 2018 and 2022.
That's really amazing. So that's a
Yeah.
huge opportunity for
Yes, yes,
some per capita income generation and also contribution to the state level
correct.
economic activity. Sujiji, you said in a recent parliament session, you really spoke that three areas that you think are very critical to the state of Odisha are youth and women, the empowerment of youth and women in the state. You spoke about education, which you brought up today, education and innovation and R&D. You also talked a little bit about the growth of MSMEs, micro and small medium enterprises. Tell us about this sort of state of economy around MSMEs. Are we more in Odisha around the micro side? Are we growing a entrepreneurial ecosystem where we carry the entrepreneurs across the value chain in Odisha?
Well, unfortunately, Odisha didn't have a culture of enterprise as compared to, let's say, Gujarat or the Maharashtra or the Tamil Nadu. Uh, but 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 we realized that if we have to grow economically, if we have to generate jobs for our youth, then we need to support our MSMEs. We need to first of all nurture and create MSMEs and then support them through technology, through finance, access to finance, and so on and so forth. Um, I mean, 30% of India's GDP comes from MSME. So
Mhm.
70% of the jobs are created by MSMEs, both in the formal and the informal sector. So when you have these kind of numbers, you cannot ignore MSMEs. Now, I have been a big proponent of supporting MSMEs, again, because they are the job creators, they are the wealth creators. Now we have a very forward looking MSME policy in the state. We I was myself involved in drafting that policy as part of a team. And so we studied the best of policies, not only from other states but across the country, sorry, across the world, and then we customized it to the local needs, the local context of Odisha, and we came up with this MSME policy. A big part of that is e-commerce, our export through e-commerce, because Odisha has
Mm.
extremely good handicraft and handloom sector. Okay, we have some of the best handlooms and handicraft, but unfortunately, because of lack of training, lack of awareness, because of lack of capacity amongst the weavers, amongst the artisans, they're unable to market their products. So handlooms, handicraft, agri products, organic horticulture products. So today we have an ambitious program of partnering with Amazon, with Google, with Meta, and our artisans, our weavers, our farmers. Today they are able to access the global market,
Mhm.
and we have a target of reaching $100 billion by 2027, or 20, anywhere between 2027 to 2030. $100 billion export revenue through e-commerce. So and all of it will be for MSMEs.
Mhm.
So today we have less than 1,000 MSMEs who are exporting. Okay, we want to increase that to 50,000, and from Odisha. So we are really focusing on MSMEs because
Mhm.
we know that MSMEs are the growth engine, and by leveraging technology, by having access to the global market, that's the only way you can you know, add value to the MSMEs and bring more revenue to the state, and grow up the value ladder.
That's really impressive. So you're saying that essentially, I mean, the state is stepping in to support MSMEs to build distribution channels to a global market and to really set up those
Yes,
market linkages for your entrepreneurs in the state. So that's really impressive, and that's also a very promising strategy. Um, I know Anirudh wants to get to climate in a
Yeah,
bit.
Sujit, I know that we've obviously talked now a fair bit about the economic development vision and the various elements as you see, right? Both for India in many ways and also Odisha in particular. But I also know
right.
that you're passionate about foreign policy and about climate. And as we look, far out into India's future and even really the world's future, climate stands out as one of those global issues as well as local issues that threatens, if not handled properly, to derail many of the economic development plans or visions that governments or the private sector might have across the world. And so I wanted to ask you
Sure.
about your views on India's climate transition. Right, I was just recently at COP as well in the
Okay.
UAE, and of course, there's a lot of talk around the things needed, whether it's technology that's needed to transition away from fossil fuels, the finance that's needed for developing countries like India, and of course, states like Odisha also to make that climate transition. There'll be jobs and structural transitions needed, skilling needed to transition, whole
Yeah.
workforces from a traditional industrial
Yeah.
economy to a more, let's say, climate friendly or a net zero type economy.
Right.
So there's obviously many elements to this, but would love to hear your thoughts on how you see India's climate transition panning out over the next few years and decades, and what are some of the key elements that India needs to get right?
Right. Let me start with Odisha, Anirudh. Odisha is a mineral economy. Right. So we have
That's
uh, we
right.
have we have 30 districts in Odisha, of which 20 districts are dependent on coal. Uh, so you have a large workforce that is dependent on fossil fuel in Odisha, whether
Absolutely.
they are workers working in the coal mines or the workers involved in the
Yeah.
transportation sector, and so on. Now, yes, transition is a great thing. We are definitely looking to transition from a fossil fuel based economy to a green economy. But how do you ensure this transition is fair and just, right?
Just.
And yeah, in fact, we are the first state in the country to have the climate action plan. We had a climate action plan way back in 2012. So it's not that just because we are a coal bearing state or a mineral rich state, we do not realize the concerns of climate change and the adverse impact of climate change. Now, this is why I said that we are creating a cadre, an army of the solar barefoot engineers.
Yeah.
We have plenty of land in the state. We have plenty of land, barren land. We have very high insolation, very tropical climate. So we are very, very conducive to produce solar energy. And of course, it will take a while for us to transition from coal to solar and other green sources of energy, but we are on the right path. Now, Honorable Prime Minister has articulated his vision of net zero, right? So India will become net zero by 2070. By 2030, we'll have 50% of our energy needs coming from green sources. We'll be producing 500
Correct.
gigawatt of green energy by 2030. PM has articulated his life mission, lifestyle for environment. Great,
That's
great,
right.
great statements. Lofty pronouncements. But my concern was, how do you reach to this 2070 goal? There are no interim milestones. There is no roadmap. There is no blueprint. Okay, there are no short-term goals, and there is no accountability. Today, you have different ministries of government of India. You have different states talking in different languages about what they understand about this 2070 goal, the net zero goal, how to reach there. So there was really, really no coherent strategy. So I think we have discussed this, Anirudh. I introduced what is called the private members bill in the parliament
That's right.
last year, called Net Zero Bill 2020, which was which actually got a lot of media traction, and I knew that it's rare for a private member bill to become an actual legislation. Okay, the last time a private member bill became an act was probably in 1970s, 74, I think. But my idea was to to force the government to come up with its own bill or its own law to show its commitment towards the 2070 goal. Tell me which private sector will invest in a goal which is 50 years ahead, right? So,
Mm.
uh, I'm glad that after I introduced the bill, the honorable Minister for Environment and Climate Change took note of it, and then I was invited by the government functionaries, and they assured me that they're coming up with a bill soon to 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 uh, to reach 2070 goal. So first and foremost, we need to have accountability. We need to have a clear roadmap. This is the role of government of India. This is the role of the respective ministries. This is the role of the local bodies, local urban bodies, and the rural bodies in India. We need to make this whole climate debate or this climate action a mass movement. You cannot make your climate goals a success unless you involve the grassroots, unless you involve the panchayats, unless you involve the PRI bodies, the Panchayati Raj institutions in India.
Yeah.
So this is why you need to make it a mass body, a mass movement. So I'm glad that after I introduced the bill, the government has really taken. I mean, of course, they were working on it. I'm not saying that there was a lot of effort going on, but my idea was to force them to have a clear accountability mechanism to involve the panchayats and involve the grassroots and involve the general
Yeah.
public
Yeah.
in this, which has started.
Yeah. No, I think that's a fairly, I think, accurate sort of representation of what needs to be done to make sure that the plans can get actualized, right? To make it more granular, set maybe industry-wise, state-wise, and state district level-wise plans and targets. And I want to quickly shift. I know we are limited on time, but I want to quickly shift to a question that I think also I know you're also very interested in foreign policy and travel widely as part of, both parliamentary delegations and otherwise across the world. And so one of the questions I wanted to ask you was, if you now look at the geopolitics of the last 2, 3 years in the world, and you look at how India is positioned within those geopolitical churnings, one finds that both within India and outside of India, there's a lot of optimism, a lot of hope that India is now positioned as well as it ever has been, possibly, in terms of the world's geopolitical dynamics. It's of course growing at, it's one of the fastest growing economies. It's being wooed by investors, being wooed by various countries around the world as, as an alternative to the, engine up to our north that drove the world economy for many years and decades, right? But I wanted to ask you now, as an MP, um, are you seeing the optimism that's there at the global level about India? Are you seeing that translate tangibly at the state and district levels? Are you seeing that
Ye-
sort of getting translated into something positive at the state and district levels yet? Or is that
Yes, I do.
largely, at the higher levels?
No, I see that optimism at the state level. May not be at the district level, but I certainly see it at the state level. To the extent that the states in India have started competing with each other today to attract FDI, to
Yes.
attract investment, to partner with foreign entities, to have sister city uh, arrangements with other cities across the globe. So yes, certainly, as you have rightly observed, that there is a newfound confidence in India's foreign policy. Uh, there is there's certainly the geopolitical angle because of the largely because of the China factor. You have EU, you have US, you have Japan, Australia, and because Indo-Pacific has become the global theater today. So
Yeah, the main arena.
and then
Yeah.
because the main arena of competition in the world. So and because of its geographical positioning, because of its growing economic clout, I think India is really well positioned to well, not exactly exploit, but to leverage this uh, I mean this
This
opportunity.
moment. Yeah.
This
Yeah.
moment, yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's helping that we are growing at 7%, and if we continue to grow this at this rate for another 10, 15 years, then the gap that we have with China will possibly narrow. Today, Chinese economy is 5 times Indian economy, and I have
Yeah.
always believed that China has been behaving the way it is, and I will not mince words to say that China has been behaving like a bully. It has picked up fight with almost every one of its neighbors, largely because of its strong economy. And and uh, and as the gap narrows, I think, and the Chinese economy is not exactly slowing down, but it's almost plateauing. So, as the gap narrows, India will continue to become more and more influential in global politics and global order. Now, we need to we again. I must also add a word of caution here that we still have a large section of the population which is still worse than sub-Saharan Africa, right? So we cannot have an India which is a middle income country or possibly a developed country by 2047 or 2050 unless you take this large section of a population along. So you cannot have two Indias, right? Or you cannot have an India and a Bharat. So we still have a long way to go. But as I've said, I'm extremely optimistic about India's future because I see a lot of positive developments. I can give you one or two examples. The finance tech today, we have 10 billion transactions per month through our UPI. Can you imagine 10 billion
Yeah.
transactions a month? So that's a great example of how if we really focus on doing something great, then we are capable of doing that. And you know who the biggest beneficiaries of this financial stack and this digital financial revolution are? It's the middle class people. It's
I
the low
think it is
income class people.
the middle
It's the
class and
vegetable
the
vendors,
MSMEs. I think. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
MSMEs
Yeah.
and the vegetable vendors, the rickshaw pullers and the auto rickshaw drivers. They are the ones who are the biggest beneficiaries. And if we can replicate this success in our education sector, in our health sector, in our judicial reforms, then I think we are looking at a great future for India.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think, as you mentioned earlier, even the solutions for many of our intractable social problems like education and healthcare might very well lie, much like for financial inclusion, we've seen it, as you've rightly pointed out, in the right use of technology that benefits all segments of our society. I think at the core, that's what I'm taking away from your vision, that you've got to leverage technology
Absolutely.
at multiple levels for solving some of the problems that otherwise have seemed very hard for India as a large socio-economically diverse country to tackle. I think with that,
Is the
Priyanka,
great is
we
is the great tech game.
I didn't want
That's
to
right.
say it, but thank you for for mentioning it. I think as you were saying that, of course, I wanted to say you were preaching to the choir. I am obviously much like you, a big believer in the power of technology to shape the destinies of nations. Um, but no, this has been a great conversation, very tangible, very specific. I think the note of cautious optimism that you've sounded is the right one for a country as large as India and a population as diverse as India's. I think overly being optimistic is a foolhardy exercise. We've got to be cautiously
Absolutely.
optimistic and make the most of the moment and this phase that I think India has now entered. So thank you so much for
Absolutely.
articulating your vision for so many different pieces from economic development, education, R&D, tourism, sunrise industries, foreign policy, climate, and of course, youth and skilling. Thank you so much. This has been a great and fun conversation. And thank you for taking the time. I know we're in the middle of the parliamentary session, so thank you for taking the time from what I know is a very busy time in your schedule.
Thank
Thank you
you,
so much,
Priyanka. Thank you,
Sujit. Really
Anirudh.
learned a lot.
Wonderful talking to both of you.
Really learned a lot.
Really.
Very nice to see you. Learned a lot,
And hope
a
to
lot
see
from
you.
you
Hope
today.
to see
Thank you so
Priyanka.
much.
Hope to see you in Delhi or in Odisha soon. No, I think you're based in
I
the
hope to
US
see you.
now, right? Absolutely.
I am, yes.
So you have an
And
I
open
and
look.
and
welcome,
I'll
open invitation.
add one more invite, Sujiji, on your behalf, if I may, because we'll have Harvard alums and Harvard affiliates from around the world possibly watching this. Please do come visit Odisha. I think we have
Yes, it's a
Harvard
beautiful
alums that we
state.
are very proud of. Yeah, it's a
Yes,
beautiful
absolutely.
state,
State.
different
Yes.
than many of the other states that some of the Harvard alums might have seen. So please do take this as an opportunity to get in touch with Sujit ji and come visit Odisha.
Anytime. Always
Thank
an
you,
open
Sujit.
invitation to any Harvard alum. I'd be happy to host any Harvard alum.
Yeah. No, great. Thank you so much, Sujit ji.
Bye bye.